Welcome back to the channel. This is part 22 to Road to Becoming a Champion chapter 22. Blackout in Celadon City part 2. Sigh. Siddiq muttered to itself as it walked through Celadon City. Ever since the group had left it, Siddiq had been wandering around aimlessly without a clear destination in mind. Most people who passed it by just ignored it. They were either too panicked about the blackout or just didn't care about a Siddiq going about the streets. Not that Siddiq minded. It was used to being treated poorly by now, so it just did whatever it wanted to. It eventually came to a large building at the edge of the city with two very large generators sticking up from the building. Siddiq had never seen this building before. Deciding to see what's inside, Siddiq walked up to the door and jumped to turn the door handle, but found it was locked. Giving up already or just simply forgetting what it was doing, Siddiq made its way to another part of the building and saw a Magnemite hovering above its head. Siddiq stared blankly at the Magnemite for a moment before the Magnemite began floating away from Siddiq. The duck Pokemon followed after it and watched it go into an open air vent on the side of the building. The vent was just large enough for the duck Pokemon to squeeze through if it crawled. Without giving it much thought, Siddiq entered the vent. Ash was sweating profusely right now. He was too nervous to even move. Brock, Misty, and Serena didn't have the gun pointed against the back of their head like Ash, but they knew they were in just as much danger. "Didn't you hear what I said?" the raspy male voice growled. "I thought I told you to drop the Pokeballs and turn around slowly." Seeing the dangerous look on the four Rocket members' faces in front of them, the group decided it was best to do what the voice said. They slowly put the Pokeballs back on their belts and very slowly turned towards the owner of the voice with their hands raised in surrender. Once they were facing the other way, they discovered there was another person standing next to the man who was the apparent owner of the distinct, raspy voice. It was a young woman, and both had on black Team Rocket uniforms, but they seemed to hold an air of authority around them. The man had short green hair and brown eyes, while the young woman had long golden hair that split into pigtails down her back and purple eyes. "But," the man said in his distinct voice, once the group did as they were told. The woman spoke next. "You four. Take their Pokeballs, and be careful not to get shocked by that Pikachu. It doesn't look too good." "Yes ma'am," the four grunts saluted, before doing as they were told. They merely shoved Pikachu over to where they were, since they couldn't pick it up at the moment, before swiping all of the group's Pokeballs and clipping them to their own belts. "Now that you have our Pokeballs, could you please stop pointing the gun at my head?" Ash asked nervously with his arms still raised in surrender. "We will once we make sure you are completely helpless," the man responded. Who are you?" Serena asked nervously as well. The group had run into Team Rocket a few times by now, and had never seen these Rocket members before. "If you'd like to know, we'll tell you," the woman responded. They then struck a pose. "Prepare for trouble, and make it double," they both said before the woman started her line. "To infect the world with devastation. To blight all people in every nation. To denounce the goodness of truth and love. To extend our wrath to the stars above. Cassidy and Butch. We are Team Rocket circling the earth every day and night. Surrender to us now, or you will surely lose the fight." "That's right," they both finished before the man pointed his gun at Ash's head again. The group was having a strange sense of déjà vu. There was another group of Team Rocket members that liked to introduce themselves with a motto as well. "So Cassidy and Bus?" Ash asked. "It's not Bus, you little brat. It's Butch." "Weren't you listening?" the man shouted angrily. Sorry. Ash apologized quickly. He realized this man still had a gun pointing at his head and thought it would be best not to upset him. HMPH. "Whatever," the man grumbled as he quit shaking with rage. "Anyway, you four are coming with us. Let's go," Cassidy ordered as she walked past the group and Rocket grunts. The Rocket grunts were next, followed by the group and Pikachu, with Butch bringing up the rear. "So where are you taking us?" Serena asked. "You will see soon enough, little girl," Cassidy responded as they were being led down the corridor. It wasn't long until they reached the end of the hallway. Cassidy opened the door and allowed everyone to walk past her before going in herself. Inside of the room, the group was surprised to see a lot of people tied up. There were several adults that appeared to be workers for the power plant, and about 4 other kids or teenagers that looked like Pokemon trainers as well. The group's face lit up with realization. This is what happened to all of the missing trainers, and why no one could be contacted at the power plant. They were all captured by Team Rocket. These crooks were behind everything. The group also noticed how weak and tired all of the workers and trainers looked. It seemed as though they would give the bare minimum to stay alive. Go sit against the wall with the other trainers, Cassidy barked. The group made their way over to the wall to sit down, and Ash sat next to an unknown trainer on his right with Serena on his left, followed by Misty on Serena's left and lastly Brock. Butch finally took his gun away from Ash's head once they were sitting against the wall. The 4 Rocket grunts then went over to the group and began to tie them up with some spare rope that lay in the room. As they were being tied up, Ash took in the appearance of the trainer on his right and was surprised to find he sort of looked like him and wore similar clothes. The boy had messy auburn hair covered by a blue and yellow hat. He wore a dark green open short sleeve jacket over a green shirt with green and yellow pants. Ash also noticed that he was the only person tied up who didn't look on the verge of collapsing. He stared up defiantly at Team Rocket as they tied up the group. "So this is what's happened to everyone," Ash commented. "You crooks have been capturing anyone who comes to investigate the polluted water." "That's right," Cassidy confirmed. She then noticed something. "Hey, wait a second. You are a black-haired boy with a Pikachu outside of its Pokeball with 2 girls and another boy. Your name wouldn't happen to be Ash, would it?" "Yeah, it is." "What of it?" Ash retorted. "We've heard a lot about you from those losers Jesse, James, and Meowth," Cassidy replied. "They kept trying to tell the boss that his plans kept being ruined by this twerp with a Pikachu named Ash. The boss was furious. Yeah. Now they are on some heavy-duty punishment because they kept failing the boss," Butch said as they both began to laugh. The group could tell there was some rivalry between these Rocket members considering how they talked to the others. "Finally the boss allowed us to lead this mission. I say we are doing a much better job than those 3 ever could. We even captured the oh-so-powerful Ash and his friends." Cassidy smirked in sarcasm. "I don't get it. What do you guys hope to accomplish by stealing Celadon City's electricity?" Ash asked. "You're a curious one, aren't you?" Butch smirked as he folded his arms. "We have cut off the flow of electricity to Celadon City, and by using the help of the Magnemite and Magneton and this power plant, have been redirecting it back to our headquarters. We are using the electricity to have enough for the many things we are researching there," Cassidy said. "Don't you realize that there are sick and injured Pokemon in the Pokemon Center who need that electricity? If they don't get the proper care they need, they could die," the boy beside Ash spoke up. "And we should care why?" Cassidy sneered. "You're horrible," Serena yelled. "We are Team Rocket, you silly girl. Do you expect us to be nice and care for weak Pokemon?" Cassidy yelled back, making the girl shrink back under her intense glare. "Once this city has been without electricity for a while, we will bring it under siege," Butch said evilly. "Once we take over Celadon City, we will move this plan to the other cities around Kanto as well. Then we will take over those cities, and before long, the whole region will belong to Team Rocket." "So that's your ultimate goal?" Brock spoke in a low voice. "Huh. You brats don't even know half of it. You 4 and those other trainers get front row seats to watch Team Rocket take over this region," Cassidy grinned evilly. "Well, we'd love to stay and chat, but we have business to take care of," Butch said. "That's right. If you keep quiet, we might even bring you some water later. Just keep in mind that it's dirty." Cassidy laughed. The 2 then exited the room followed by the grunts who were wearing rubber gloves while holding Pikachu. Wait. Don't take Pikachu. It's sick. Ash called out frantically. Quit whining, kid. We'll take real good care of your Pikachu, one of the rocket grunts replied as they shut the door. Pikachu, oh. Ash hollered, but it was too late. They were gone, leaving the group alone with the other trainers and power plant workers. Ash shut his eyes tight. He couldn't believe Pikachu was just taken from him, and it was all his fault. Pikachu, Ash whispered before his head snapped up when the unknown boy beside him spoke. I'm sorry. It looks like you four were captured as well, the boy beside Ash said sadly. Yeah, Ash replied. How long have you been here? I've been here about 7 days, the boy answered. I managed to come up to the power plant, after being chased by the Grimer and Muck through the sewers, but when I got up here, I saw that the Magnemite and Magneton were under some sort of spell. It was then I bumped into Team Rocket, and they tied me up here. You've been here 7 days? Misty exclaimed. Yes. I was the first trainer they captured. I've had nothing but bread and water since then. It's killing me on the inside, but I can't let them know I'm weakening, they both said. So you said the Magnemite and Magneton and the Power Plant were under some sort of spell? Serena asked. That's right. They seem to have a dazed look in their eyes, so they are probably being controlled by a psychic Pokemon somewhere in the power plant, the boy responded. I see, Ash muttered before realizing they didn't even know the boy's name, and should probably introduce himself. Oh, by the way, my name is Ash Ketchum. I'm Serena Gabina, Serena introduced. I'm Misty Waterflower, Misty added. I'm Brock Harrison, Brock finished. The boy nodded. It's nice to meet you guys, though I wish the circumstances were different. My name is Richie. Richie then added. Your Pikachu didn't look so good, he noted. I know. Pikachu is sick, and now it's with Team Rocket all because of me. If I hadn't let it come along, it would still be safe, Ash replied as tears began to come to his eyes. Richie nodded his head sympathetically. It's okay. Even though it was sick, I can tell you raised Pikachu really well. I have a Pikachu myself, so I would know. If I was a better trainer, Pikachu wouldn't be captured like us, Ash muttered in defeat. I'm sure it's because you're such a great trainer that Pikachu followed you, Richie told Ash. What do you mean? Ash asked. I think he means that, since Pikachu cares so much about you, it wanted to make sure you were safe while investigating the sewers. That's why it came, even though it was sick, Serena said, jumping in. Exactly. Richie smiled. Ash thought about what Richie and Serena had told them, and realized what they said was right. He recalled all the times that he had risked his life for Pikachu, and saw Pikachu was returning its love to Ash by risking its health. Pikachu really was the best friend Ash could ask for, and that's why he had to get it back. Thanks. You're right, Ash said with renewed determination. There's got to be a way to get out of this mess and rescue Pikachu and our other Pokemon. Well, Ash, you seem to get us out of bad situations the most. Do you have any ideas? Misty asked as she squirmed helplessly in the ropes. Richie, you've been here the longest out of all of us. Have you come up with any sort of plan? Ash asked him. As a matter of fact, I have one underway right now. It seems one of the Magnemite here wasn't affected by the psychic Pokemon due to it being away when Team Rocket first came. It has come in this room occasionally through the air vent, and I got acquainted with it. It keeps trying to seek out help, Richie explained. Do you think that's the same Magnemite we saw in the sewers? Brock realized. It was by itself. If that's true, it probably was, Richie agreed. It should be coming back here pretty soon to report if it found anything. No sooner had he said this than Magnemite appeared from the air vent and floated in front of Richie. Magnemite. You're back. Have you found anything? Richie asked hopefully. The Magnemite said nothing as it turned back towards the air vent and looked up. The trainers followed its gaze and heard what sounded like crawling in the air vent. Someone was above the ceiling coming to rescue them. Way to go, Magnemite. Richie smiled. Who did you find? His question was answered soon, however, as a certain yellow duck Pokemon fell out from the air vent, frantically yelping and waving its arms the whole way down. It hit the floor hard and appeared dazed. Sigh, Psyduck muttered. The group suite dropped upon seeing the Psyduck. Is this the same Psyduck that followed us out of the Pokemon Center? Ash asked. I think so. That clueless expression is enough to give it away, Misty said with a hint of disdain. How do you suppose it got all the way over here? Brock wondered. Who cares how it got here? Psyduck can help by untying us. Misty smiled. Richie then called out, hey, Psyduck. Do you think you can untie us from these ropes? Sigh, the Pokemon questioned as it tilted its head to the side. Untie us? We are trapped in these ropes and need your help, Richie tried again. The Psyduck continued to stare blankly at the group. Everyone sighed. It looked like this duck couldn't even comprehend that they needed to be saved. However, Misty had enough and exploded. You stupid duck. Get that thick head of yours over here and untie us right now. Misty, stop. Yelling at Psyduck won't do us any good, Brock scolded. Besides, you don't want Team Rocket to hear us and take away our only chance at getting out of here, Ash added. Misty let out a huff, but said nothing else. This Psyduck was really getting on her nerves. Oh, please. You have to help us, Psyduck. Serena pleaded. We've all been captured by an evil group and had our Pokemon taken away. If we don't get out of here, something terrible is going to happen to our Pokemon and the rest of the city. Sigh? Psyduck questioned as it directed its attention to Serena. Serena then felt tears come to her eyes. My best friend's Pikachu is sick and needs medical attention fast, but it can't get it with the power out, like it is at the Pokemon Center. If you don't save us, it could end up in even worse shape. I can only imagine what will happen to my Charla and the rest of our Pokemon if they fell into the hands of Team Rocket. Please, you have save us, Psyduck, Serena said as the tears began to fall freely from her face. Psyduck continued to stare blankly at Serena, giving no sign it comprehended anything she said. It's hopeless, Serena, Misty scoffed. That Psyduck is too dopey to understand anything. Then to her and everyone's surprise, Psyduck walked over to them and began to untie Serena. Oh, Psyduck. Thank you. Serena cried with delight. I don't know what you said to it to make it help us, Serena, but thanks, Ash complimented. I'm impressed as well, Richie commented. What do you know? Psyduck can listen to reason, after all. Maybe it's not as dopey as I originally thought, Misty said. It must have been the heartfelt words from Serena that were able to reach Psyduck, Brock reasoned. Her words were so genuine that, even though Psyduck seems a little slow, it could really tell we were in trouble. Once Serena was untied, she went over to Ash and began to untie him, while Psyduck went over to Brock. Next, Richie was untied, and finally Misty. Psyduck earned a glare from Misty that it waited to save her last, but it didn't seem to notice. Thanks, Psyduck. You really saved us, Richie said as he began to rub Psyduck on the head. Psyduck, it said, giving Richie another blank expression. So what should we do now? Ash asked. I'd say the best plan would be to locate our Pokemon first, Richie suggested. That way if we run into Team Rocket again, we can fight back. Good idea, Ash agreed. Misty turned back to the other semi-conscious trainers and power plant workers who were still tied up. What about them? She asked. I hate to say it, but we may have to leave them here for right now, Ash replied. They are too weak to even stand. We can save them once we take back the power plant. The group agreed that was the best course of action as they went to open the door. They were very lucky that it turned out to be unlocked. Ash entered the hallway first and slowly looked around to make sure the coast was clear. He then motioned for the rest of the group and Magnemite that it was safe, and they followed him. Siddiq stood in a zoned out state for a moment before coming as well. Richie, do you have any leads on where our Pokemon are being taken? Ash whispered. Your Pikachu has a cold, so sparks are flying from its cheeks, correct? Richie asked. That's right, Ash confirmed. In that case, this Magnemite may be able to sense the strong electricity coming from your Pikachu. Richie reasoned. Do you think you can help us, Magnemite? Magnemite, it replied. The group began to follow Magnemite down the corridor as they kept their eyes peeled for any rocket members they could possibly run into. They were also trying to keep as quiet as possible. After a few minutes of walking, the group found out the power plant was becoming a maze. There seemed to only be a straight path as they were coming through the corridors originally. Now, it almost seemed to rival Mount Moon as far as different pathways. They were really lucky they had a Magnemite who seemed to know where it was going. After a few more minutes, the group rounded a corner and spotted two rocket members ahead of them with their backs turned. They quickly darted back behind the other side and pressed their backs against the wall, hoping they weren't heard. Luckily, it didn't seem they were. They decided to listen into what was being said. Man, this stinks. I don't see why we have to guard the room that has all of the Pokemon in it. It's not like those trainers and workers can break free, one rocket grunt grumbled. You said it. I feel like we were given the short end of the stick. While Cassidy, Biff, and other rocket grunts get to actually conduct the activity at the power plant, the other whined. So this is definitely the room where our Pokemon are being held, Ash whispered. We just need to figure out how to get past these rockets without our Pokemon, Brock whispered as well. It was then that Magnemite flew around the corner and revealed itself to the two rocket grunts. Hey. What do you think you are doing here, Magnemite? You should be in the generator room with the others. Is Drowsy taking a nap or something? The first grunt said angrily. The Magnemite said nothing as it let loose a thunderbolt which shocked the grunts into unconsciousness. Way to go, Magnemite, Richie cheered as they came around the corner and ran past the grunts to open the door, but found it locked. Darn it. Isn't there some way we can open this door? Ash asked angrily as he began to tug on it. Wait, Ash. One of these rockets are bound to have the key with them. Let's search their uniforms, Richie suggested. The group then began to search any pockets that were on the rockets' uniforms until at last Richie found the key. He unlocked the door as the group, Magnemite, and Siddiq filed into the room and looked around. The room was filled with the different trainers' Pokeballs. In the center of the room was Pikachu, who was also tied up. Pikachu! Ash cried happily as he went over to his buddy. To his surprise, Magnemite flew past Ash as well, and began to circle around Pikachu affectionately once more, confirming it was the same Magnemite as the one in the sewers. Ignoring it for the time being, Ash quickly untied Pikachu. Once it was untied, it quickly leaped into Ash's arms, and gave him a hug. Ash was shocked, but he didn't care as he embraced Pikachu back. Oh, Pikachu. Thank goodness you're okay. I was so worried, he said as he looked down affectionately at his partner. Pikachu cooed back. Serena watched the heartwarming scene with a smile on her face. Just seeing those two reunited once again was enough to make her happy. She then began to search for her own Pokeballs throughout the pile with the others. Magnemite said as it floated around Pikachu with a dreamy expression on its face. Thanks for leading us to the Pokemon, Magnemite, Ash said gratefully, but Magnemite paid Ash no mind as it continued to watch Pikachu closely. By that time, the group had recovered all of their Pokeballs, while Serena walked over to Ash to give his back. I believe these are yours, Ash, Serena smiled as she kindly handed Ash back his Pokeballs. Thanks, Serena, Ash smiled back as he took them and clipped them to his belt. You aren't going anywhere, an angry voice yelled behind everyone. They spun around to find Cassidy and Butch standing there in the doorway, along with the two grunts, who were guarding the door that Magna might attacked, and they didn't look happy. "Oh no. It's Cassidy and Butcher," Serena exclaimed. "Aaaaaieee. The name is Butch. It's not Butcher," Butch shouted angrily as he pointed his index finger accusingly at Serena. "I don't know how you brats managed to escape, but if you know what's good for you, you will put those pokeballs back down or else," Cassidy said dangerously. "I'm not giving you crooks my Pokemon ever again," Ash yelled. "Oh really?" Butch smirked as he withdrew a gun once again and pointed it at the group. "Are you sure about that?" Before the group could answer, they saw that Psyduck had wandered its way around the rockets and cried out, which distracted them. "What is this Psyduck doing here?" Cassidy asked in confusion. Psyduck stared at Team Rocket blankly for a second before it unleashed a water gun from its mouth. Unfortunately, all that came up was a few trickles of water that landed a short distance in front of Evil Group. "How embarrassing," Cassidy deadpanned while everyone else in the room sweat dropped. That was one thing the two opposing groups agreed on. "Sigh. Psyduck said frantically as it stomped its webbed feet. It then rubbed the back of its head sheepishly and blushed. Team Rocket continued to stare at the Pokemon in disdain, but fortunately, it was enough distraction for Ash to run forward and tackle Butch to the ground, knocking the gun out of his hand. There was a mad dash towards the gun in the next minute as everyone in the room went after it. Finally, after much struggle, the one who ended up with the gun was none other than Pikachu. "Way to go, buddy," Ash cheered. "Choo," it muttered weakly. "Now that they have the gun, what are we supposed to do, Cassidy?" Butch asked as he looked at Cassidy for ideas. "We still have our Pokemon." "Don't panic, Hutch," Cassidy said. "My name isn't Hutch," Butch screamed. "Go, Raticate," Cassidy said, ignoring Butch's outburst and releasing the evolved Rattata. "Go, Primeape," Butch yelled as an angry pig monkey Pokemon appeared from its Pokeball. "Whoa, a Primeape," Ash said as he and Serena pulled out their Pokedexes. Primeape, the pig monkey Pokemon and the evolved form of Mankey. "If you make eye contact with this Pokemon, it will chase you forever," the Pokedexes said. "Fine, let's do this. Go Bulbasaur," Ash yelled as he threw his ball forward. "Go, Oddish," Serena called. "Go, Geodude," Brock yelled. "Go, Staryu," Misty said. "Go, Sparky," Richie called as well. "Sparky?" Ash asked in confusion, once another Pikachu appeared. "I give each of my Pokemon nicknames," Richie explained quickly. "We can talk more after we take care of these guys." Ash nodded as he prepared. The other two grunts had sent out their other Pokemon, which consisted of two Golbat. "Raticate. Hyper Fang," Cassidy ordered. "Primeape. Use Karate Chop," Butch commanded as well. Both Pokemon leaped forward, but the group wasn't going to give them that advantage. "Bulbasaur. Use Razor Leaf on Raticate," Ash called. "Oddish. Use Stun Spore on Primeape," Serena hollered as well. Both Pokemon launched their respective attacks. Bulbasaur kept Raticate at bay with its Razor Leaf, while the Oddish's Stun Spore was able to hold Primeape in its tracks. Meanwhile, Misty and Brock were taking care of the Golbat. Seeing how Team Rocket's Pokemon were losing, Richie decided to pitch in. "Alright, Sparky. Use Thunder Shock." "Pikachu!" Sparky yelled as it began to shock all of Team Rocket's Pokemon. Ash's Pikachu decided to join in as well despite being unwell and let loose a Thunder Shock at the evil group. The combined efforts were too much for Team Rocket's Pokemon to take as they fell to the ground, unconscious. "I can't believe this. This is insane," Cassidy said in disbelief as she and the other Rockets returned their Pokemon. "Let's get back to the generator room. Quickly," Butch urged as he and the others bolted from the room. "You guys aren't getting away." Ash yelled as the group, Magnemite, and Psyduck ran after them. After chasing Team Rocket for a while, they were led to a large room with 2 large generators in the center. Between the 2 generators was a tapir-like Pokemon. The top part of its body yellow and the bottom part brown. It had tired-looking eyes. It was a Drowzee. It had several wires attached to its head, while the other ends were attached to a machine of some sort. Also in the room were many Magnemite and Magneton who were constantly using their electricity on the generator. So this is how you've been manipulating the electricity, Ash scowled. You've been using Drowzee to control those Pokemon. Exactly. Now it's time we taught you a lesson. Attack, Drowzee. Cassidy ordered. We can handle this. Bulbasaur. Razor Leaf. Ash ordered. Use confusion, Drowzee, Butch countered. The Drowzee stopped its strange movements and directed its hands at the Razor Leaf. The leaves were sent back to Bulbasaur, which hit it instead. Come back, Bulbasaur. Ash called as he returned it. Let's try our electricity. Sparky, try Thunder Shocking Drowzee. Richie suggested. Sparky then went to Thunder Shock the sleepy Pokemon, but Drowzee once again used confusion to send Thunder Shock right back at it. Sparky jumped out of the way just in time, but that didn't change the fact that Drowzee wasn't affected. It's no use, you brats. No matter what attack you command, we will just have Drowzee send the attacks back at you, Butch said. I don't understand how one Drowzee can be that powerful, Brock commented. We knew how much strength our operation would take, so we made this Drowzee extra powerful. We might have used a few illegal drugs to do it, Cassidy smirked. You did what? The group gasped in horror. You could actually be hurting that Drowzee if you have been giving it strength enhancing drugs. How could you do that? Misty exclaimed. Hush, little girl. Pokemon are nothing more than tools used to meet our ends. We don't care about the health of any Pokemon. Cassidy retorted. That's terrible. That poor Drowzee, Serena said with tears in her eyes as she watched Drowzee continue to control the Magnemite and Magneton. She and the others couldn't help but feel sorry for it despite it being their enemy right now. Enough. Cassidy yelled. It's time we took care of you brats once and for all. Drowzee. Use the strongest psychic attack you can muster on them. Drowzee then seemed to be concentrating very hard as it was building up incredible psychic energy. The group stood at a loss, not knowing what to do. Any attack they gave to Drowzee would just end up redirected back at them. It was then, to everyone's surprise, that Psyduck stepped in front of everyone once again. This annoying thing again, Cassidy said in disgust. Drowzee, attack that Psyduck instead. Get rid of that useless Pokemon. Drowzee then blasted a psychic attack which hit Psyduck head on. The duck Pokemon was blasted off its feet and sent flying several yards back. The group cringed and stared worriedly as they watched. It was true that Psyduck was annoying, but they didn't wish harm upon it. Now use confusion on it, Drowzee. Butch ordered. Psyduck then was enveloped in a blue light as it began to struggle violently in an effort to get free, but Drowzee's confusion was too strong. Sigh. Psyduck cried out in pain as it struggled and started holding its head in a death grip. Psyduck looks to be in a lot of pain right now, Misty said worriedly, until she noticed something odd about it. Psyduck closed its eyes for a second, and opened them back up, to reveal they were now glowing blue. It was also wearing a serious expression on its face. What's going on with Psyduck? Ash asked as they watched. Psyduck pointed its arms at Drowzee, and unleashed a massive burst of psychic energy from its hands, completely catching Drowzee and everyone else off guard. The waves blasted into Drowzee, which knocked it against the wall. Then Psyduck pointed its arms at the machine Drowzee was using to control the Pokemon. It let loose another blast of psychic energy which destroyed the machine and caused it to blow apart. WHWH, what the heck is going on? Butch cried out in anger as he and the other Rocket members saw what happened. Ash and the rest of the group were quite impressed. They didn't know Siddiq ever had this kind of power. They were wondering what could have caused it. Siddiq then pointed its arms at the Team Rocket members and enveloped them in a blue aura. It then slammed them into the wall, which caused them to slump down, clearly knocked out. Whoa, Ash muttered as he and the rest of the group turned to Siddiq to see its eyes return to normal as it held its head again. Sigh, it said in a clueless manner, as if nothing significant had just happened. Siddiq actually saved us a second time, Misty said in amazement. The group then looked up and saw the Magnemite and Magneton were floating around aimlessly now that the machine had been destroyed. So what do we do now? Serena asked. We've got to find a way to get the electricity running back to Celadon City. The group noticed Richie had then run over the generators and opened one of the breakers. They went over to watch to see what he was doing. I'm a little savvy when it comes to electrical equipment, Richie told them. I just need to find the correct switch and that may be able to get the power flow back to Celadon City. After searching for a few more moments, he spoke up. Oh, here it is. Sparky, can you jumpstart these wires for me while I flip the switch? Ash, you wouldn't mind if I used your Pikachu either, would you? Oh, no I wouldn't, Ash said as Sparky and Pikachu walked over to where Richie was standing. Richie then attached some wires from the generator to Sparky and Pikachu's cheeks. Okay, go ahead, he said as he flipped one of the switches in the breaker as the Pokemon let loose their thunder shocks. That should do it, Richie said, but we won't know for certain until we are back outside. We should get out of here and go get the police, Ash suggested as the group turned to leave, but something stopped them, a horrible smell. Do you guys smell that? Ash asked as he pinched his nose. It can't be what I think it is. They are supposed to be in the sewers. Misty cried out as she held her nose, as well. They must have seeped their way into the power plant. Brock exclaimed. Sure enough, about 5 seconds later, the group's fears were confirmed as a horde of Grimer began piling into the room with Muck bringing up the rear. They could never seem to catch a break. Don't you Pokemon realize you are polluting the water here? Ash exclaimed. It's making life very hard for the people here. Please, you have to leave. The sludge Pokemon paid him no mind as they continued to stare angrily at the group. It doesn't look like they will listen to reason, Brock muttered. And they are blocking our exit. Serena cried. Maybe Siddiq can help us again, Misty suggested. She then turned to the duck Pokemon. Okay, Siddiq. Use those awesome psychic attacks we just saw you use. Siddiq nodded its head and turned to stare at the Grimer and Muck. It began concentrating really hard. It looked like it was going to unleash a really powerful psychic attack, but all that happened was absolutely nothing. Siddiq got a questioning look on its face as the group fell over in disbelief. So much for Siddiq being the hero again. This dimwit duck doesn't even remember how to use its own attacks. Misty shouted. Sigh, Siddiq said sheepishly, while it blushed in embarrassment. We've got no choice but to fight our way through, Ash said as he grit his teeth. Charmander. I choose you. Go, Chola. Serena called. As soon as the two fire lizards were released from their balls, Charla went over to Ash's Charmander and began to hug it, while the other Pokemon blushed. Charla was such a romanticist. Chola. Focus on the battle, Serena cried. Chola released Charmander and looked intently at the group of Grimer in front of them. Use Flamethrower. Serena and Ash called out to their respective fire types. Both Pokemon unleashed a stream of fire from their mouths, which hit the horde of Grimer head on, causing them to cry out in pain. Despite them doing a good amount of damage, there were simply too many for the two Pokemon to take on alone. Realizing they needed help, Richie ordered his Sparky to unleash Thunderbolt. Ash's Pikachu joined in as well. Surprisingly, Magnemite appeared in front of the group and began shocking the Grimer also. Soon, all the Magnemite and Magneton in the room were helping out. It was soon a giant wave of electricity and fire that was all over the Grimer. The Grimer screamed in pain and immediately fled the room as fast as they could. The group knew they couldn't celebrate too soon as there was still one left. Muck, their leader, was still there. It gave Ash a menacing stare, and he understood what it wanted. I get it. You want a battle, don't you? Ash questioned, to which Muck nodded. Alright, let's do it. Serena said, but was stopped by Ash putting a hand in front of her. Hold on, Serena. Muck wants to battle me and me alone. I can do this, he said. Serena nodded her head in understanding, and stepped back to allow Ash to handle it. You're up, Charmander. Ash told it. Char. It said as it stepped in front of Muck. Muck shot a sludge attack at Charmander, but it jumped out of the way. Muck then began to shoot several more sludge attacks at Charmander where it continued to dodge them. Due to Muck launching so many sludges, the room was becoming polluted by the nasty goop, so Ash knew he had to finish this quickly so the generators weren't affected. Charmander. Use flamethrower, he yelled. Charmander took a deep breath and shot red hot fire from its mouth, which hit Muck dead in the center. Pikachu joined in once more by delivering another thunderbolt, while the love-obsessed Magnemite shot out a thunderbolt as well. The combined attacks jetted straight back at Muck and struck it dead on. Muck was engulfed in the wave of attacks, and yelled in pain. It then slumped to the ground in exhaustion. Ash knew exactly how he would handle the Muck leader. He was going to capture it. Ash turned his hat backwards as he took out a spare Pokeball. Pokeball, go, he yelled as he threw it forward. The ball connected with the defeated Muck, and sucked it inside the Pokeball. It shook back and forth, and until it dinged to show Muck was successfully caught. Alright. I caught a Muck. Ash cheered as he picked up the ball, and showed it to everyone. Pie Pikachu. Pikachu said as it held two fingers above its head. Char. Charmander smiled as it mimicked Pikachu's movements. Hey, Pikachu. You look much better. Ash smiled down once he noticed his rodent friend didn't have a weak expression anymore. Chew. It said. Happily. I bet all Pikachu needed to do was release some excess electricity, Brock said. That's great, Pikachu. Ash exclaimed. He then noticed Muck's Pokeball disappear from his hands. Ash knew that, since his limit of 6 Pokemon had been reached, it was being transferred to Professor Oak's lab where it would be kept safe. He smiled a little bit as he thought of what kind of expression Professor Oak would have once he saw Ash captured a Muck of all things. Pikachu then went over to Magnemite to thank it for his help, but Magnemite didn't appear interested, and instead floated away from Pikachu. Chew. Pikachu questioned. What's going on with Magnemite? Serena asked. Just a second ago it was infatuated with Pikachu. It must be, because Pikachu is no longer sparking its cheeks, Brock said. While Pikachu had a cold, it was electrically charged, but now that isn't. Magnemite has no interest in Pikachu. Ah, I see, Ash said. Pikachu then went over to Sparky to shake hands with it, so they could be properly introduced. Ash and Richie smiled at the scene. Well, it seems our Pikachu are hitting it off quite well, Ash said. Sure does, Richie agreed while nodding his head. Thanks a lot, Richie. We never could have gotten out of this mess without your help, Ash thanked. I should be thanking you guys. All of you are excellent trainers. There is no way I could take care of Team Rocket on my own. Richie praised. Speaking of Team Rocket, Serena said as she turned towards Cassidy, Butch, and the rest of the knocked out grunts, what about them? Oh. Yeah. We need to hurry and go get the police and let them know about Team Rocket and the captured trainers and power plant workers. Ash remembered. I say we tie up these Rocket members in case they wake up, while we go get the police, Brock suggested. Once they finished tying up Team Rocket, they ran out the door with Magnemite leading them to the exit. The other Magnemite and Magneton went back to their original, assigned duties at the power plant, since Drowsy could no longer control them. As they left, they saw other Rocket grunts sprawled out on the floor covered in sludge. It looked like the Grimer and Muck had taken care of any remaining Rocket members, so at least they did some good while they were here. The Celadon police force was now swarming the power plant and capturing all of the Rocket members. All of the other workers and trainers who were captured were being taken to the hospital for recovery. Officer Jenny had urged Richie to do the same, but he politely refused and said he was fine. As Butch and Cassidy were being led out of the power plant in handcuffs, they gave an intense glare to the group. "You have meddled in Team Rocket's affairs for too long. You little kids better hope you never see our faces again." Cassidy growled as she and Butch passed them. "Yeah. No kidding," Misty retorted as she stuck her tongue out at them. "I can't believe this kid with the Pikachu and his group thwarted our plans as well. We've sunk to the same level as Jesse, James, and Meowth. Can you believe this, Biff?" Cassidy exclaimed. "My name's not Biff. It's Butch." Butch screamed as they were shoved into a police car. The police officer then opened the door to the police car and began to drive away to take them to jail. "Looks like we are carted off again," they both cried as the police car drove away. The group smiled as they watched them leave. "Looks like they are going to jail where they belong," Ash said. "Yeah," Richie agreed as he and Ash smiled to each other and shook hands. "Just to make it official, it's nice to meet you, Richie," Ash said happily. "You too, Ash," Richie replied as he continued the handshake. Officer Jenny then approached the group and smiled down at them. "On behalf of the people of Celadon City, we would like to thank you for saving our city." "It's no problem." Ash smiled. "You have rid the power plant of Team Rocket, and even the Grimer have fled the sewers of the city. With a little filtration, our waters will be clean again in no time. Also, after hearing your report of the Drowsy, we have taken it to the Pokémon Center to make sure no damage has been done by the illegal drugs it had. We will make sure it finds a loving trainer." Officer Jenny reported. "That's great." Serena and Misty exclaimed as they clapped their hands in excitement. "It must be because you captured the leader that made the Grimer leave," Brock informed Ash. "Yeah," Ash smiled back. "We can't thank you enough for everything," Officer Jenny praised. "I know of a way you can repay us," Brock yelled as he took Officer Jenna's hand. "We can have a nice romantic dinner." "What?" Officer Jenny asked, clearly confused. Misty reached out and pulled Brock away. "By here. Officer Jenny just got done dealing with one problem in the city. She doesn't need another one so soon," she said irritably. "Not the air," Brock muttered. Well, anyway. The police force and I wish all of you the best of luck in all your endeavors," Officer Jenny said as she saluted. "Thank you," the group replied. With that, Officer Jenny left the scene. "Hey guys. I hate to be the one to bring this up, but after not eating anything big for 7 days, I'm pretty hungry. Why don't we get some supper?" "It's on me," Richie suggested. "Really? That sounds great. Thanks a lot, Richie," Ash exclaimed, perking up at the mention of food. Everyone laughed. If there was one way to grab Ash's attention, it was always food. "Well, let's go. I know of a great place," Richie said, as the group left the power plant. Unbeknownst to them, Psyduck was watching them silently from behind. It then waddled after the group to follow them. Meanwhile at Professor Oak's lab, the elderly professor had just began making his supper of tofu when he heard one of the machines going off in the other room. Curious to what it was, Professor Oak went to investigate and saw that a Pokeball was being transferred to his system. The machine indicated it had come from Ash Ketchum. "Oh, so Ash has sent me a Pokeball, I see. I can't wait to see what Pokemon is inside," Professor Oak said eagerly as the Pokeball finished transferring. Professor Oak grabbed the Pokeball and opened it to reveal none other than Muck inside. "Muck," Muck said once it was released from the Pokeball. "Oh my," Professor Oak exclaimed as he held his nose because of the horrible smell. "What would Ash be doing sending me a Muck? Yuck." A dark man was sitting in his big chair waiting impatiently for the report he was to receive earlier as he rubbed the head of his Persian. Cassidy and Butch were supposed to make another report to him about the status of the mission over 2 hours ago. Why on earth have they not reported to me yet, the man thought. Last I heard, Saladin City had gone into a total blackout, and they were directing the electricity to our base. His thoughts were interrupted by a knock on the door to his office. "Sir. I have a very urgent message," the voice on the other end of the door cried. "Come in," the dark man said as a rocket grunt entered and bowed. This had better be good news, but judging by the grunt's expression, it didn't look like it. "Sir. I hate to report that our plan to take over Saladin City has been ruined," the grunt reported nervously. "What?" the rocket boss exploded as he pounded his fist on the desk, which startled the Persian and caused it to hiss. "Tell me what happened immediately." The rocket grunt shrank back from the rocket boss's intimidating glare but found the courage to speak again. "Well, Cassidy, Hutch, and all the rocket grunts have been arrested and taken to jail. They were beaten pretty badly by a group of trainers. They even caused the Grimer to leave the city." "Whom were these trainers who caused their failure?" the boss shouted angrily. "It was said to be this kid with a Pikachu named Ash Ketchum and his friends," the rocket responded. "A kid with a Pikachu again? That's the same excuse those idiots Jesse, James, and Meowth said," the boss yelled. "BB Bud sir. It's the truth," the grunt stuttered. The dark man stared intently at the rocket grunt who was sweating bullets, and determined he was telling the truth. "You said this boy's named Ash Ketchum, correct?" he asked. "That's right," the black-clothed man confirmed. "Thank you," the boss responded. "You may go." The rocket grunt saluted before leaving the room, which left the rocket boss alone again with his Persian. "So this Ash Ketchum has bested even Cassidy and Butch. It will not do if this child keeps meddling in our affairs," the rocket boss mused to himself as he folded his hands underneath his chin. He then pressed a button on the intercom on his desk before speaking into it. "Professor Amber," the dark man barked. "What is it, sir?" the scratchy, nasally voice of Professor Amber responded back. "I want you to take some researchers and find out everything you can about this boy named Ash Ketchum. I would like to know more about him," the rocket boss ordered. "Yes, sir." Professor Amber immediately replied. "It will be done." The rocket boss once more leaned back in his chair and resumed rubbing his Persian's head. There was an evil grin on his face